Hello, welcome to this video on how to get the create-t3 app up and running on Google Cloud using Docker and GitHub. So for those of you who don't know, create-t3 app is a kind of a setup CLI that gives you a nice integrated package with Next.js, Prisma, Tailwind, and NextAuth. Basically everything you need to get a proper server up and running in TypeScript. And that's another advantage, using TypeScript rather than JavaScript, because there you get type safety and static typing and so forth, which is very handy during development. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start this from scratch, so we're going to just copy that create command, cd into my development folder, and I'm going to run that. So we're going to call this T3 Google Cloud, and we're going to select everything. Repository, on install, just leave it as is, and we'll give that a minute. All right then, T3 has been initialized, so let's cd into it. I'm actually going to make a number of additional terminals here. So here we are. Here's the T3 app and how the initial setup looks like. So I think first we're just gonna run a development server just to see that everything is working. All right. It's loading up fine. Hello from TRPC. You'll notice that it's giving us some warnings here that we're missing some pieces in the environmental variables. We're going to have a look at that next. So let's go in here. So what we'll need is a secret for the NextAuth. We can just copy that command, paste it into this terminal. That'll create this key. Copy that, paste it in there, and then uncomment this. Then let's save that. Right then, I think it's loaded up now, and you'll see we don't get that warning anymore. So just to make sure that this is indeed the app that we have before us, let's go into the main index page here. Create-t3 app. bold. Let's make it text a lot bigger there. Okay, a little bit bigger. There we go. Just so we know that this is going to be our app that we're going to be working with. So the next thing we need to do is to set up the database. And I thought that for this project, we would try to get Supabase up and running. I have not used Supabase, so let's see how we can do this. Start your project. Yeah, let's continue with GitHub. Right. Okay. So let's make a new project. Finance organization. So let's call it T3 Google Cloud. This is the password to your Postgres database. So it must be strong and hard to guess. Generate a password, copy. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just gonna use the env file here. Keep track of that password. All of this is going to be deleted once this tutorial is done, so it doesn't matter. That's just to help us keep track of it. So I am in Europe. I'm going to pick somewhere that's close to me. Pricing plan free. Yeah, let's do it. So now Supabase is setting up the project, provisioning a database and API endpoints. Probably take a minute. All right, so Supabase is up and running now. So we need to go into project settings, and this is what we need here, the connection string, and we're going to put that into the database URL, and you will notice that here our password is missing, so which I expect is actually this here. So we'll just copy that in there. That should be fine. Okay. So here is our Prisma file, and we need to make sure the provider is correct, and that's going to be a Postgres SQL. Right, okay. Everything else we'll just leave as is for now. Save that. Let's shut down our development server and try to connect with Prisma to our database. So we're going to run npx prisma db push. Looks like that worked. Data source, Supabase. Now, after you've pushed your schema, your models to the database, you need to generate the client that matches those schemas. So every time you do a push where your schema and models have changed, you also need to make a local, or like a generate your client anew, because the client will contain all of those models and schemas and their types, which is very helpful in this setup, because then you can have, whenever you're using your database, using the Prisma client, your variables and things are going to be typed. So that's extremely helpful. So let's just do that. Generate. and that's up to date. And just, we can also run the studio so that we can actually have a look on we can access the database using this Prisma Studio, which we can make changes to directly. So we can see here all the models are there. That matches. So we even have the example here. So let's say we want to remove the example model. Or before I do that, let me go in here, add a record. So all of this stuff is auto-generated, save one change, and there you see this new entry is made into the database. I can also just delete that, and it's gone. Now, I want to get rid of the example model. So the way I can do that is go back into my schema here, remove the model, save that, and then let's just make a new terminal here. We push that. That's strange. What does that mean? Okay, so there is some additional things and setup we need to do with Supabase. So we need first of all to go back to our environmental variables, rename this to direct URL, and create database URL. We're going to have to append an additional query here to the database URL so that we have two different ones here. Now we're going to have to go to the Prisma and we're going to have to update this page. So I have to add a direct URL, env, now I wonder if this is going to work, because we might need to change up this file as well. So let's just do that quickly here. Direct URL. Everything should be fine there. Okay, so now that we have that set up, let's see if this will do the trick. No, that did not work. Okay then, we got it working. Not quite sure what exactly went wrong, but the way to fix it was to go into the settings on the Supabase and restart the project over there. I suspect there might be some issue with the connections between Supabase and Prisma, something to do with the yeah, I'm really not sure, but I ran the command after I restarted it, and that updated the database as I would have expected. And here you can see that we're now missing the example model. So right then. Okay, and now we're gonna set up authentication for the app, and we're gonna be using Discord for that. So here we are in the Discord developer portal. Gonna put in a new application. So let's call it the app name, but attached local to it, because we're going to create two. So here's how that looks like when you got it set up, and then you go up on the top left there, you go OAuth 2, and here you will add redirects. So I think the redirect should be this one here. So this is one we're going to use locally for just to see that it works. Save changes. Then we're gonna reset the secret key. I'm gonna copy that, and then we're gonna put that in our env. Right, okay, we're also going to need client ID. Just grab that, put that in there. Okay, so we save that, and let's boot up the development server, Supabase. Let's go back here. So here we're giving a sign-in button, and as we see in look in the index page, that's going to be part of this auth showcase component, and that returns this button that we're seeing, and it's going to, based on whether there is session data, which is it's gonna fetch from that hook over there. It's gonna execute sign out if there is somebody logged in, otherwise it's gonna execute sign in, right? And that's gonna also be displayed here using that. So go back to our app. Oh yes, I'm on my incognito mode, so let's actually let's keep that open. Close 3000. Okay, we're up here, log in, sign with Discord. See here, authorize, and you see there's lots of activity here. That's Prisma working with Supabase, with the database, putting in all the details so that the app will remember who has created an account and who has been logged in, and so on and so forth. So now we're logged in here. You can see the secret message. If we sign out, we signed out. So we have now set up auth locally. All right then, the next step now is to Dockerize the app and run it locally. So to do that, let's go into the documentation, because here you'll find that the T3 people have set up what you need to do to get the configuration going. First we need to configure next. So actually let's just close down the local development. So, and as you can see here, let's close that down. First of all, we need to edit the define next config and set the output to standalone. Okay. So let's create a Docker ignore file first. add those bits there. So here we see the Docker file, the contents of the Docker file that we need to put in. Just copy that over. So I'm just going to check. Okay. Now, based on a project I was working on previously, I had to add some additional things to Prisma. What I had to add was this line here. So let's just do that. In case we need to do that, to regenerate the client based on those bit. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we have our Docker file set up now. Let's now move to, so we're going to use Docker Compose because that makes it easier for us to input the environmental variables we're going to need in order for our app to run. So we'll just copy this and go back here, create a new file, Docker Compose. I believe that's it. Docker Compose YAML. Okay. Add this here. Now we need to get our environmental variables over there. What else do we need? Just copy that. Okay, that should be it. Then we will only use this command here. So actually probably a good idea, just to be on the safe side, to ignore the Docker Compose file. Since it contains environmental variables, we don't want to accidentally push that up to GitHub. Okay then, I think that's everything. So let's check if this works. So I have Docker running now in the background. Okay, it turned out I had incorrectly formatted the YAML file. It should be looking at it like this. It needs to have those dashes there. Okay, and now it's building. I'll give that a moment. Okay, yes, so we're getting an error here, and that is because we have deleted the example model, and so this does not exist. And that'll throw an error when during the linting and checking validity of types across the app. So let's go back to our app here. That's going to be in the server, routers, example. Yeah, you see now it's throwing an error here. So let's just delete that. We can leave the rest. That's still in use in the elsewhere in the app. One handy thing to do is before we do the before we go ahead and Dockerize it again, is to go and run npm run build, and that's going to run the building of our app. This way it's going to check linting and validity, and once that passes and it builds successfully, then we know we won't have any trouble with the build once we build it in the Docker container. So that might save us a little bit of time. But you see now that it passed the linting and checking validity stage. Now it's building. So we'll just let that run and finish, and then we'll try the Docker again. All right, so that's done, and you can see here we get some useful information from Next about the size of the various pages, whether or not they're going to be static pages, so it's going to be rendered as static HTML, or whether it's going to be server-side rendered at runtime. So in places where you use get initial props or get server-side props, or perhaps more recently using React server components, it's going to render on the server at runtime, because it's gonna have to fetch data and then update the page in HTML, create it, and then send it over to the user. But given that for pages where we won't need data, then it will just automatically generate a static HTML, and that will sort of optimize the efficiency of the app. Okay, so let's try Docker Compose once more. You see also that it skipped a bunch of steps because it had those cached, which is quite handy. And now you see it's passed the linting and checking validity stage inside of Docker, making the build. Right then, okay. So now it built the image, and then it's writing that image and running it. So it's a funky URL. No, see here, but we're getting a bunch of errors. Yes, I see. So it shouldn't have those quotation marks. So that's why it's throwing up errors everywhere. Let's quickly remove those. Save that. Hit compose up once more. So now it shouldn't need to recreate the image build because it's already done that. So it needs to inject the updated environmental variables. So let's go back to localhost. And we're not seeing any errors, and we are logged in, as you can see. So now that's running on the Docker. I can just sign out, sign back in. Authorize. So you see there, T3 Google Local. All right. That looks like seems to be working. So it's quite handy to use Docker locally first before you start pushing it out to the cloud, just to check that everything is working fine, and then it's much quicker to fix on your side rather than having to fix it, then push it up to GitHub and then let that rerun everything externally. If there are errors, you can quickly, much quicker sort it out on your end. So that's quite handy. So you can see that it's running here on Docker, but we can just stop it from the window here, and it's going to exit in the terminal automatically. So I'm just going to, well, I can just leave it for now. I'll delete it later. Okay, so the next step is going to be to set up Google Cloud. So I'm in my Google Cloud console and I'm selecting new project. So I'm going to call it T3 Google Cloud. That's going to be our setup here. So here we have a brand new project. Maybe the first thing we need to do is to set up the GitHub repo. So let's just do that. Actually, let's first check what we have here. Yeah. Just add all of those things. Now, let's do we're going to push this existing. We're going to call it, just keep the same name. Tests for description. I'm going to keep this one private because there's not going to be anything in here setup wise other than mostly the basic scaffolding of a T3 app. I'm just going to put it as private. Remote, call it origin, commit current push commits, yes. Okay, and that's up and running. Just gonna check GitHub on my end. There it is. Right then. Back to Google Cloud. So what we're interested in doing is to run this as a Dockerized app here. So we go into Google Cloud Run from the menu here, as you saw, and then we create a service. Now it's going to enable a bunch of APIs. So this is a new project. And it's going to just create those as it needs. Okay, so first things first, deploy revision. I'm going to select deploy new revisions from a source repository. I'm going to set it up a cloud build here. And once again, it's going to enable a bunch of APIs. So, see there's some repositories, and the way I've set it up is so that Google only has access to select repositories. So I'm going to have to go into my GitHub. So when you're in the GitHub, it's gonna lead you to a page called the Google Cloud Builds, and then further down there's something called Repository Access, and there you just select repositories. So I'm gonna select the T3 Google Cloud I just made, and I'm gonna save that, and it's gonna redirect me back to this page, and I am going to select, there we have it, yeah, advanced options, no need. Next. So it's going to work off the main branch. I'm going to select Dockerfile there. Source location for Dockerfile is /Dockerfile, and then we click save. So the nice thing about this is whenever there is a change to the main branch, it's going to automatically trigger the cloud build, and it's going to build a new image from that. So let's we're just going to call this kill out. I'm going to select a region that's closer to me. Allocation of CPU and pricing. So this is a stateless app run on a container, and you can make it so that it only runs whenever it has something to do, so that whenever there is a request or somebody is entering the page and somebody's doing something on the page, then the app is going to be running. So if you want it to just run whenever there is something to do, just set the minimum instances to 0. That means, however, that when the app is shut down and when there is no activity, and when it goes into activity, it's going to do what's called a cold start. So it's going to, boot up the app and get it running, and that may take 1, 2, or 3 seconds. So there is a bit of delay there. If you don't want that delay, set the minimum number of instances to 1. Otherwise set it to 0. However, if you do set it to 1, then there's always going to be running at least 1 instance, and that means that will incur costs, right? So that's something to be mindful about. Likewise, you can also set a maximum number of instances. So it's a good idea to just set it to the minimum that you need, and then just increase it based on your requirements, right? Otherwise you might have someone just flooding your app with malicious intent, and that can incur a lot of costs. So these are ways in which you can control the costs of things. There's also, you can set up a budget alert, but that doesn't really functionally do anything with your app. This, however, does, right? So if you do get flooded, once again, then that's not gonna be so bad, just because you've set a max of instances there. So we need to select authentication, so allow unauthenticated invocations, because this is going to be a public website. Anything we need to do here? Oh yes, we're going to need to set up environmental variables and secrets. So let's actually just do that then. So if we go back to our app here, we have a number of secrets or environmental variables. So when it comes to sensitive data, you want to use secrets here. And you can just use the menu here. You don't need to go to a separate menu to set this up. So given this is a new project, there's going to be no secrets, and you also need to set up the permissions as you go along. Okay, so we see here, the secret manager API must be enabled before creating new secrets. So we need to enable that. So let's open that in a new tab. So once you select secret manager from security menu, you see this opens, and you just click enable. Give that a moment. Okay, that should be set up. So if we return let's actually remove that and open up the menu again. Yes, you see now it's visible, so we can create a new secret. Let's go ahead and do that. So this is going to be the name of the secret. So call it the name of the project first, and then database URL. And then we put in the contents of what we want our secret here to be. So I'm going to copy this without the quotation marks. We input that there, and then we create a secret. You'll get this pop-up saying that this service that runs this Cloud Run does not have permissions to access this selected secret. But you can just click there to grant it those permissions, and then select exposed as environmental variable. Every secret is going to have a different version depending on whether it's going to be there are going to be new updates to that secret. So the way to ensure that the app always runs with the latest secret, you can click latest on the version control there, and then you can give the name to the environmental variable that's going to be used here. And since we copied over our database URL, we should put that exactly the same there, and then click done. Right then, so that's the database URL, but we also need a direct URL. So let's make a new secret for that. Cloud database direct URL. Maybe this is not the best way to name this, but the point is that it makes sense and it's easily findable. Copy that, put that in here. Create secrets. Once again, granted, and then exposes environmental variable, latest. So I think that was called direct URL. There we go. And then we work our way down. So we also need to. So maybe we could also make a different next auth secrets for the production version or the test version. But I'll just skip this step for now. So one could also make a single secret and put in all the sensitive data in that secret, and then extract it by adding, taking out the data like that. But I like to just keep them separate so that each environmental variable is regarded as its own secret and its own file. Just want to keep them separated like that. Auth Secret, let's see here, done. And that's it for now, I think, because remember, these are the credentials for our local Discord authentication provider. We are going to need to go back to Discord to set up a new one. But before we can do that, we need the URL for the new for the app that's going to be run on the cloud. So given that we don't have any more setup to do for now, I think we will just create this. And we're going to let Google do its thing. And then we're going to return to this page to add the remaining environmental variables. Okay, so now it's setting up the cloud build trigger. And once that is up, it's gonna fetch the code from GitHub, and then it's gonna start building the image, just like we did with Docker locally. And given that the Docker build was successful and that ran fine, I should expect the same happening on the cloud as well. So we've been given a URL here for this app. I'm just going to copy that. I'm just going to go over back to Discord, and we're going to make a new application here. T3 Google Cloud create. So right, so here is it's going to be the URL for our for T3-app on Google Cloud Run. Here is, so here is the endpoint. I'm gonna get the secret, copy, just save that in a separate text file that I'll use. Let me also get the client ID. Okay. I think that's all we need. Save changes. Let's go back to Google. So it looks like it's building. I think we're just going to let it finish building before we start changing the config, just to check, just to see that is working as intended. Everything went fine there. All right then. Looks like everything went fine, at least as far as the build was concerned. The app will not run now because it's missing some environmental variables. So we will click edit and deploy new revision, which will lead us back to this page here. And what we need is going to be the remaining environmental variables. So we're going to need next auth URL. So for this one, I'm just going to add it as an environmental variable this way, because all it needs there is just a link to the page. So there's nothing sensitive about this. So I don't think the extra security is needed. So we'll just leave that like so. So now we just need the Discord ID and secret. So let's create new secret. There we go. That's the ID. give it access once more, exposes environmental variable, make sure the variable name is exactly as in the environmental variable file. Click done. Now, so next secret we need. Grant the permission, expose environmental variable, latest, get the exact name. There we go. Done. So we should have in total 6 environmental variables there. It looks correct. So now click deploy. So now it's gonna make a new container with the new environmental variables and reroute the traffic. Not there is much traffic right now, but that's the process. So now we should just click this link, and that should open up our T3 app. So now we should be up and running. So if we click sign in here, sign in with Discord, we get this, authorize, and we can see the secret message. So the database and everything is working as intended, and that's it. So whenever you make new changes to the main branch, the Google Cloud is going to trigger and build the latest image. So how about we just do that very quickly. So we go back to our file here, back to our pages, back to the index, so Google Cloud. Let's call it updated with all caps. Save that. So there's a change. We go to get status, change, add them, updated. Push it. If we return to Google Cloud and click this, you'll see that it's building and deploying from repository. So it detected the change on GitHub that triggered the build, and now it's building, based on the latest version of the code. We'll just give that a moment. Okay, so Google Cloud build ran successfully, and if we start our app, you see now we have this updated. You see it's the latest version there, and we're automatically logged in because it saved the session until we sign out manually. So what you can also do, no, you cannot do it. Oh no, yes you can. So pro tip, if you want to do this even more efficiently than going through the UI, is that you can copy here the whole command line on the Google shell. So you can just run this command to, instead of going through this whole this whole UI. So if you're gonna do this multiple times, then probably down the line this is gonna be more convenient and efficient. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. We have successfully set up a Next.js in TypeScript using Prisma, database, Supabase, along with everything else that comes with the create-t3-app package. I hope this was useful to you, and if you have any thoughts, ideas, feedback, please comment down below, and I wish you a good day. Cheers.